Hello, my name is Joyce Harper. I'm 36 years old and I'm a product manager in Cleveland, Ohio. I've built a stable life for myself and my 12-year-old son. But last month, in the dining room of the house I bought, a family dinner that was supposed to be warm turned into something no one expected. My father suddenly screamed in my face, "You and your son are nothing but parasites." My mother didn't object. She just smiled and nodded in agreement. And the cruel irony was that they were still living in my own house. I didn't cry. I didn't scream back. I simply looked them straight in the eye and uttered a sentence that left the entire room frozen. From that moment on, everything began to unravel. Why did I have to confront my parents this way? What led our relationship to fracture so deeply that it might never heal? What would you do if you were in the same situation? Share your thoughts. Your story could be the message someone else needs to hear. To understand why I drew that line, I need to take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, in a modest 2-story house with floors that creaked and a backyard that always smelled of freshly cut grass. I was 18 and full of dreams when my world turned upside down. My grandfather had passed away a year earlier, leaving me $100,000 in his will. A safety net meant for my future, perhaps for college or to start my life. I was thrilled, planning to study computer science, imagining a career where I could build something of my own. But my parents had other ideas. One humid summer evening, they called me into the living room. My father, Stanley, was sitting in his old recliner with his arms crossed and his face stern. My mother, Beverly, stood by the window, avoiding my gaze. They didn't waste time on small talk. "We need your inheritance," Stanley said, his voice as flat as if he were discussing the weather. I blinked, confused. "Need it for what?" I asked, my stomach twisting. My mother finally looked at me, her expression a mix of guilt and determination. "Your brother has a chance to make it big," she said. "He's starting a construction business with your father, and they need capital to get it off the ground. It's a sure thing, Joyce. We'll pay you back." Philip, my older brother, wasn't even there to explain himself. He was always their golden child, 2 years older, charming, the one they pinned their hopes on. I was the afterthought, the one expected to fall in line. I stood there, clutching the acceptance letter from Cleveland State University for their engineering program in my hand. "What about my college?" I asked, my voice trembling. My father shrugged. "You can get loans, Joyce. This is for the family." My mother nodded, adding, "Philip's business will set us all up. You'll see." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. $100,000. My future redirected to a pipe dream I had no say in. They didn't ask for permission. They simply took it, promising to pay it back once the business took off. Spoiler alert, it never did. The construction company failed within a year. Bad contracts, worse decisions. My parents never mentioned paying me back, not once. That night, I made a choice. I stuffed a duffel bag with clothes, my laptop, and the $500 I'd saved from babysitting. I walked out of that house without saying goodbye. No one stopped me. No one called to see if I was okay. I was 18, I was alone, and I was determined to prove I didn't need them. I moved into a cramped apartment near campus, sharing it with 2 strangers to split the rent. I enrolled in college, but tuition was a beast. I worked 3 jobs, waiting tables at a diner, stocking shelves at a grocery store, and tutoring high school kids in math. Some nights, I'd collapse onto a mattress on the floor, too tired to eat. There were weeks I lived on instant noodles and coffee, stretching every dollar to cover books or bills. I would look at my acceptance letter pinned to the wall and remind myself why I kept going. My parents' voices echoed in my head. This is for the family. Their family never included me. College was a grueling routine, but I clawed my way through. I studied late into the night, fueled by resentment and a stubborn need to prove them wrong. My parents called maybe twice a year, always with the same script. "How's school?" my mother would ask in a distant tone. Before I could answer, she'd pivot. "Your brother is working so hard on his new project." Philip, always Philip. Never a question about how I was paying rent or if I had enough to eat. I stopped expecting them to care. By my senior year, I was exhausted but unbroken. I graduated with a degree in computer science, first in my class, and landed an entry-level job at a tech startup in Cleveland. For the first time, I could breathe. I paid off my student loans, bit by bit, moved into a small but decent apartment, and started building a life. Then I met my ex-husband, Travis. He was a colleague, sharp, funny, the kind of guy who seemed reliable. We got married, had our son, and for a moment, I thought I'd found stability. But life had other plans. 3 years in, I found texts on his phone, proof he'd been cheating for months. I didn't beg him to stay. I packed his bags, left them by the door, and said, "Get out." He did, but he stayed in our son's life, sending money every month. That was enough for me. Those years forged me into someone who doesn't bend. I fought for every scrap of my success, while my parents and Philip coasted on excuses. They never apologized for taking my inheritance. They never acknowledged the nights I went hungry. That betrayal planted a seed of resentment that grew quietly, waiting for the day I'd face them again. At 36, I've built a life I'm proud of. My job isn't just a paycheck, it's a testament to every night I spent studying, every shift I worked to put myself through school. I lead a team that builds software people rely on, and I'm damn good at it. My name carries weight in the industry, and that's something I earned, not inherited. I own a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with a mortgage I pay on time and a backyard where my son plays soccer. This life, this stability, is mine. Built from the ground up. My son Dylan is 12 now, and he's the center of my world. He has an infectious laugh that makes even my worst days bearable. Whether he's acing his math tests or begging me to let him stay up late for one more video game, I see so much of myself in him. The stubborn streak, the quiet determination. I make sure he knows he is enough, that he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Every weekend we have a ritual. Pizza night, a movie, and him telling me his dreams of being an astronaut. I would move mountains for that kid, and he knows it. He's my reason for everything. My parents, on the other hand, are a different story. After I left home at 18, they barely kept in touch. A birthday card here, a Christmas call there. They were always short, always hollow. But in recent years, their messages began to change. My mother would text, "How's work, Joyce?" Not because she cared, but as a segue to ask for money. "Your father's business isn't doing well," she'd write. "Oh, Philip is trying to start something new. Could you help out?" The first time, I sent a couple thousand, thinking it was a one-off. But the requests kept coming. $5,000 for a car repair, $10,000 for a business opportunity. I started saying no. Each time, my mother's messages grew sharper. "You're doing so well. You can't spare something for family?" My father called once, his voice gruff, saying, "We sacrificed a lot for you, Joyce." Sacrificed? What exactly? The inheritance they took? The years they ignored me? I stopped answering most of their messages. I'd see their names pop up on my phone, Beverly, Stanley, and let the calls go to voicemail. Philip, my brother, never called himself. He didn't need to. My parents were his mouthpiece. I knew they were still propping him up, still betting on his next big idea, while I was out here building my own life. It hurt, but I'd learned to live with it. I had Dylan, my career, and a circle of friends who felt more like family than my own blood. One of those friends is Denise Bailey, my best friend and financial advisor. She's been my rock since we met at a networking event 5 years ago. Denise is the one who helped me buy my house, set up Dylan's college fund, and plan for a future where I don't have to worry about money. She's blunt, no nonsense, and always has my back. When I told her about my parents' money requests, she didn't sugarcoat it. "They're using you," she said, her voice firm. "You don't owe them a cent." Her words stuck with me, reinforcing the boundaries I'd started to build. I thought I'd found my balance. Work, Dylan. A life I could call my own. I wasn't looking for closure or reconciliation with my parents. I just wanted to move on. But then my mother's number flashed on my phone one night. her voice trembling with urgency. That call would drag me back into the chaos I'd spent years escaping. That call came on a quiet Tuesday evening. I was helping Dylan with his math homework, his pencil scratching against a notebook as we sat at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed and I glanced at the screen. My mother's name. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not since her last text asking for $10,000 for a vague emergency. I let it ring, debating whether to ignore it. But something inside me stirred. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity. I answered. Her voice was shaky, not the usual calculated tone she used when asking for money. "Joyce, it's your father," she said. "He's sick, very sick. We need you to come home." I froze. The word home hit me like a slap. Home. The house I'd left at 18, the place where they'd taken my inheritance without a second thought. I gripped the phone tighter, my heart racing. "What's wrong with him?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She hesitated, then said, "It's his heart. The doctors say he needs surgery, but we're in trouble. The bank is threatening to foreclose on the house. $300,000 in debt from your father's last business venture." Her words were rushed, almost desperate, but I caught the familiar subtext. They needed something from me. I leaned back in my chair, looking at Dylan, who was watching me with those big, curious eyes. "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. My mother didn't miss a beat. "Come back, Joyce. Talk to the bank. Maybe help us out. You're doing so well, and we're family." There it was, the same worn-out line she'd used for years. Family. I wanted to laugh, but a lump formed in my throat instead. I told her I'd think about it and hung up, my mind spinning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my sofa, a glass of wine untouched on the coffee table, replaying her words. My father sick. The house at risk. $300,000. It wasn't just about the money, it was the weight of everything I'd buried since I left. Part of me wanted to ignore them, to let them deal with their own mess. They had never cared about my struggles, so why should I care about theirs? But another part, the part that still remembered my dad teaching me to ride a bike or my mom baking cookies when I was little, gnawed at me. If I didn't go back, would I regret it when it was too late? I called Denise the next morning. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp and practical. "Don't let them guilt you," she said when I told her about the call. "They've been bleeding you for years. You owe them nothing." I knew she was right. Denise always cut straight to the point, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to face them, not for them, but for me. If my father was truly sick, I didn't want to live with the what-ifs. I told her I was going to drive over to their side of town, not to save them, but to close a chapter I'd left open for too long. I sat Dylan down that night, explaining that I'd be gone for a few days. "Is Grandpa okay?" he asked, his voice small. I hated that he had to worry about a man he barely knew, thanks to my parents' absence from his life. "I don't know yet," I said, brushing his hair back, "but I'll be back soon, and we'll have pizza night." He nodded, trusting me completely. That trust was what kept me grounded. Driving across town felt surreal. I hadn't been to my parents' house in years, not since a tense Christmas visit when Dylan was 5. I arranged for Dylan to stay with a trusted neighbor and called my boss to take a few days off. The whole time my stomach was in knots. I wasn't just returning to a house, I was walking onto a battlefield. My mother's call wasn't just about my father's health or the house. It was a demand disguised as desperation. I knew they would ask for money, probably more than I could imagine. And Philip, my brother, was likely lurking in the background, ready to profit from whatever I gave. When I pulled up to the house I once called home, it looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was chipping, the lawn overgrown. My mother met me at the door, her face pale but composed. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice softer than it was on the phone. I nodded, walking inside, bracing myself for what was to come. My father was in the living room, looking more frail than I'd ever seen him, but his eyes still had that stubborn glint. Philip wasn't there. Typical. They didn't waste any time. Over coffee, my mother laid it all out. The bank was moving fast and they needed me to step in. "You have the means," she said, her tone shifting from pleading to expectant. I listened without saying a word, my mind already racing toward the confrontation I knew was inevitable. The next night, I agreed to stay for a family dinner. That's when everything fell apart. The dinner table was set, but I wasn't prepared for the ambush. I'd agreed to stay for the meal, hoping for a civil conversation, maybe some clarity on my father's health or the foreclosure looming over their house. Instead, I walked into a trap. My parents had invited my brother, Philip, who strolled in late with his usual smirk plastered on his face. My mother doted on him, piling food onto his plate, while my father sat at the head of the table with a tense, unreadable expression. I took my seat, my stomach tightening, sensing the gathering storm. The first few minutes were deceptively calm. My mother chattered about neighbors I didn't remember, her voice overly bright as if trying to paper over the cracks. Philip bragged about his latest business idea, a vague real estate venture that sounded as shaky as the last one. I nodded politely, picking at my food, waiting for the real reason I was there. My father broke the silence, his voice low and deliberate. "Joyce, we need to talk about the house," he said, leaning forward. "The bank isn't budging. We owe $300,000, and they're ready to take everything." I put my fork down, meeting his gaze. "I know," I said carefully. "You told me that yesterday. What's the plan?" My mother jumped in, her tone sharp. "The plan is you, Joyce. You're making good money. $350,000 a year, right? You could cover at least $200,000. It's the least you can do for family." Her words landed like a punch. $200,000. Not a loan, not a discussion, just a demand, as if my life's work was theirs to claim. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's a lot of money," I said. "I have my own responsibilities, my son, my house, my future. Why does this fall on me?" My father's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. "You've always been selfish," he snapped. "We raised you, gave you everything, and now you're hoarding your money while we lose our home." I stared at him, stunned. Gave me everything? They had taken my inheritance. They had left me to fend for myself at 18, and now I was the selfish one? Philip chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. "Come on, Joyce, don't play the victim. You're sitting pretty while we're drowning. Step up." I clenched my fists under the table, my blood boiling. They hadn't even asked about Dylan, who was back at my house, safe with a neighbor. They didn't care about my life, my sacrifices, only what I could give them. I was about to respond when my mother leaned forward, her smile cold and calculating. "You and your son are nothing but parasites," she said, her voice slicing through the room, "living off our sacrifices, acting like you're better than us." The word parasites hit me like a blade, but it was the mention of Dylan that broke something inside me. My son, the child who had never asked for anything but my love, was not their punching bag. I pushed my chair back, rising to my feet, my voice low but firm. "Don't you dare bring my son into this," I said, locking eyes with her. "You have no right to speak about him or me that way." My father scoffed, his face red. "Show some respect, Joyce. We're your parents." I almost laughed at the irony, respect from the people who had taken everything from me. I turned to Philip, my eyes burning. "And you," I said, my voice sharp as a knife, "you've coasted on their excuses your whole life, letting them beg for you. Don't you tell me how to live." His smirk vanished, but he remained silent. My mother tried to speak, her voice rising. "Joyce, you owe us. We're family." I cut her off, my patience shattered. Family doesn't demand what I've earned. Family doesn't insult my son. You want to call us parasites? Fine, I'm done. My heart was pounding, but my resolve was unshakable. I looked from my father to my mother, then to Philip, and made my decision. "I'm done letting you walk all over me," I said, each word deliberate. "I'll take control of this. For me and Dylan, not for you." My mother laughed, her tone dripping with contempt. "Take control? You've always been a dreamer, Joyce. You'll never get one over on us." I held her gaze, unflinching. Keep talking. You'll see." The room fell silent, their faces a mixture of shock and scorn. My father slammed his hand on the table, his voice a growl. "You think you're better than us? You're nothing without this family." I didn't flinch. I had spent years building my life, and their words couldn't touch me anymore. I walked out of the dining room, my hands steady, my mind racing with a plan. I called Denise that night, her voice a lifeline. "Are you really done with them?" she asked, her tone a mix of concern and pride. "I have to be," I said. "For Dylan. For me." She didn't argue. She just promised to help. I knew the fight was far from over. I thought the worst was behind me, but my mother had other plans. 2 days after the dinner, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Friends, coworkers, even Dylan's soccer coach were messaging me. "Have you seen this?" I opened TikTok, and there it was, a video from my mother's account. Her face was streaked with tears, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "My daughter abandoned us," she said, clutching a tissue. "She has all this money, but she won't help her own family save our home. She's turned her back on her own blood." The caption read, "Ungrateful daughter lets her parents lose everything." It had thousands of views, hundreds of comments calling me heartless, selfish, a disgrace. My stomach turned. Beverly had taken our fight public, twisting the truth to paint me as the villain. I sat on my hotel bed staring at the screen, my hands shaking with rage. She hadn't just insulted me. She had dragged Dylan into this, implying he was part of my supposed betrayal. I wanted to fight back, to post my own video, to tell the world how she and my father took my inheritance, how they called us parasites. But I knew reacting in anger would only feed their narrative. I needed to be smarter, more strategic. I called Denise, who answered immediately. "I saw the video," she said before I could speak. "It's disgusting, Joyce. What do you want to do?" I paced the room, my mind racing. "I want to take control," I said, my voice steady despite the rage. "They are not going to bully me into submission. Not this time." Denise didn't hesitate. "Then hit them where it hurts. The house. They're desperate to keep it. You have the means. Buy it out from under them." The idea ignited something in me. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what they had tried to take from me. My power, my dignity. I told her to start the process, and she promised to connect me with a lawyer in the morning. The next day, I met with a real estate attorney Denise recommended, a sharp woman named Laura, who laid out the situation. The bank was ready to foreclose on my parents' home due to their default on the $300,000 loan. Laura confirmed that I could buy the property directly from the bank, eliminating their claim. "It's not cheap," she warned, "but your finances can handle it. You'd own the house free and clear, and they'd have no leverage." I nodded, my resolve hardening. This wasn't about saving them. It was about ending their hold over me. Denise worked her magic, pulling together my savings, investments, and a loan I could comfortably manage. Within a week, we had a deal with the bank. I signed the papers, my hands steady, as I became the legal owner of the house I grew up in. It felt surreal, like closing a wound I'd carried for years. But I wasn't finished. I had Laura draw up a contract. My parents could stay in the house, but only if they agreed to pay back the $300,000 within 5 years with interest. If they missed one payment, they would be out. It was a lifeline, but one with strings attached. My strings. I didn't tell them immediately. I wanted the news to land with weight. Instead, I had Laura send an official notice to my parents and Philip, outlining the new reality. I owned the house, and they were tenants subject to my terms. The notice also included a cease and desist letter, demanding that Beverly take down the TikTok video and stop spreading lies. "Defamation has consequences," Laura wrote, her words crisp and unyielding. I knew my mother would see it as a slap in the face, but I didn't care. She had crossed a line, and I was done playing fair. When the notice arrived, my mother called, her voice shrill with fury. "You think you can control us, Joyce," she spat. "You're no better than us, lording your money over everyone like you're some big shot." I let her rant, my silence louder than her words. "You received the notice," I said finally. Comply or face the consequences. I hung up, my heart racing but my conscience clear. Philip texted me later, a single line, "You're ruthless." I didn't reply. He wasn't wrong, but I wasn't sorry either. I drove back to my side of town that weekend, picking up Dylan from the neighbor's house. He ran to me, his smile brighter than the sun. "Did you fix everything?" he asked, his voice full of trust. I held him tight, a lump in my throat. "I'm working on it, kiddo," I said. I didn't tell him about the house or the video, not yet. He didn't need to carry that weight. But I knew this fight was far from over. My mother's silence after the phone call felt too calculated, like she was planning her next move. I sat with Denise that night, reviewing the paperwork. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said, her tone half warning, half admiration. "They aren't going to take this lying down." I nodded, looking at the contract in my hands. I had made a stand, but I was ready for whatever came next. My mother's silence didn't last long. A week after the legal notice arrived, I got a call from Laura, my lawyer. "They're refusing to sign the contract," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Your parents are claiming they owe you nothing and are demanding to stay in the house." I wasn't surprised. Beverly and Stanley had spent their lives dodging responsibility, always twisting the narrative to suit them. But this time, I held the cards. I owned the house now, every square foot of it, and their refusal just sealed their fate. I told Laura to proceed with the eviction. "No more chances," I said, my voice steady. They made their choice. The eviction process wasn't fast, but it was thorough. Laura filed the necessary paperwork, and a court date was set. My parents fought back, of course. Beverly sent me a barrage of text messages, each one sharper than the last. "You're tearing this family apart," she wrote. "How could you do this to your own blood?" I didn't respond. Her words stung, but they didn't change my mind. She had called Dylan a parasite, slandered me on TikTok, and expected me to finance their mistakes. Stanley's messages were colder, more direct. "You'll regret this, Joyce." I saved every message, every voicemail, handing them over to Laura as proof of their hostility. Philip remained quiet for the most part, but I knew he was in the background, egging them on. He had always been their golden child, the one they propped up while they tore me down. When Laura served the eviction notice in person, she told me Philip was there, his face pale but his mouth shut. He didn't dare confront me directly, not after I'd called him out at dinner. The notice gave them 30 days to vacate. If they didn't, the sheriff would intervene. I didn't want it to come to that, but I was prepared. I had spent too long letting them walk all over me, and I wasn't backing down now. By the end of the month, they were gone. Laura confirmed they had moved out, leaving the house in a mess. Half-packed boxes, furniture pushed against the walls as if they'd left in a huff. I drove to Cleveland to inspect the property. Walking through the rooms felt strange, like stepping into a memory I didn't want to relive. The kitchen where my mother once baked cookies was now filled with dirty dishes. My old bedroom, where I dreamed of a future beyond their grasp, had been turned into a storage room for Philip's failed businesses. I didn't linger. I hired a cleaning crew and put the house up for rent. The income would cover the loan I'd taken to buy it, and whatever was left over would go into Dylan's college fund. I later learned that my parents had rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Stanley's health was still fragile, but he was managing according to a mutual acquaintance. They had found part-time jobs, Beverly at a grocery store, Stanley doing bookkeeping for a local business. For the first time in years, they were forced to stand on their own 2 feet. Philip, predictably, had moved in with them, still chasing his next big idea. I didn't care to know the details. Their lives were no longer my burden. Cutting ties with them was harder than I expected. Not because I wanted their approval, I had given up on that years ago, but because letting them go meant closing a door I'd always hoped might open to something better. I blocked their numbers, deleted their voicemails, and unfollowed Beverly's TikTok account. The video she'd posted was gone, taken down after Laura's cease and desist letter, but the comments lingered in my mind. Strangers had called me cruel, a bad daughter without knowing the years of betrayal behind it. I had to remind myself that their opinions didn't matter. I knew my truth, and that was enough. Dylan became my anchor. When I got home, he was waiting for me with a drawing he'd made. A rocket ship soaring past the moon, his dream of being an astronaut in every line. "For you, Mom," he said with a wide smile. I hugged him, my heart full. Every choice I had made, the house, the fight, the eviction, was for him, to show him what it means to stand up for yourself. We spent that weekend planting flowers in our backyard, something we'd been talking about for months. As we dug in the dirt, Dylan asked about his grandparents. "Are they mad at us?" he said, his voice small. I paused, choosing my words carefully. "They're mad at themselves," I said, "but we're okay, you and me. We have each other." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his planting. That moment, his trust in me, was worth more than any apology I could ever receive. Denise was there through it all, checking in with her usual blunt advice. "You're free now," she said one evening over coffee. "They can't touch you anymore." She was right, but freedom came with a weight. I had spent so long defining myself against my parents' failures, their demands, their betrayal. Now I had to figure out who I was without that fight. I poured myself into work, taking on new projects, mentoring younger colleagues. I wanted Dylan to see a mother who wasn't just surviving, but thriving. My team at the tech company noticed the change, my focus sharper, my confidence unwavering. I wasn't just a product manager anymore. I was someone who had taken her life back. I thought of Travis, my ex-husband, a few times during those months. He had stayed out of the drama, true to his hands-off approach. When he called to check on Dylan, he kept it civil. "You doing okay, Joyce?" he said once, his voice softer than usual. I didn't need his validation, but it felt like a small acknowledgement of how far I'd come. Dylan deserved a father who was present, even if it was just through phone calls and birthday cards. I made sure those lines stayed open for his sake. Looking back, the lesson wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about the house or the money or even the pain they had caused. It was about respect, something my parents never understood. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who see you, who lift you up, who fight for you as much as you fight for them. My parents and Philip chose themselves every time. I chose Dylan, Denise, the life I had built from nothing. That's what family means to me now. I still drive by the old house sometimes when I'm in that part of town. It's rented to a young couple now, their kids' bikes scattered on the lawn. It's just a house, not a home. Not for me. Not anymore. Dylan's laughter fills my house, our house, with a warmth I never knew growing up. I don't know if my parents ever learned their lesson, and I don't need to.